From a financial point of view, President Trump vowed to do new things, and we have something new: the American capital flight trade. It's a major pattern in markets. When the president does something consequential and new, we see four things: stocks go down, bonds go down, the dollar goes down, and gold goes up. The signature's very clear. It's revulsion against American assets. Foreigners less willing to put money here, Americans more eager to diversify out of the country. It's something that we saw a little bit of during the Carter administration, but is basically not a pattern in the United States. It's a totally common pattern in what wags joke are submerging markets. Emerging market countries that get themselves in trouble, as Argentina has many times, as Erdogan's Turkey has in recent years. Most of us didn't ever think that this would become a pervasive pattern in the United States. So from an economic and financial point of view, there is something very new. And of course, it accumulates over time. And so if you look at the combination of stocks, bonds, and the dollar, this has probably been the least successful 100 days of a new president since the Second World War. And that's a verdict that's not being rendered by any individual. That's not a verdict that's being rendered in a partisan way. It's just reflecting the judgment of markets.
Larry, we saw a couple of weeks ago the effect on stocks, bonds, and the dollar because of tariffs. And there was a suspension, of course, for 90 days for negotiations. This week, we've seen it, it appears, with regard to Chair Powell and remarks about possibly terminating his regime as a chair. Tell us about that. Will the markets keep President Trump from moving on Chair Powell?
Things change, but they stay the same. When the president of a country looks like he is driving events, and he is driving events in an ill-considered populist direction against the wisdom of all economics, then bad things happen. That's the response to the tariffs. That's the response to the Fed bashing. That's the response to the indications of fiscal responsibility that will come to be the response to the undermining of the rule of law.
The tradition of keeping score on a president's first 100 days began with FDR when the country was in the depths of the Great Depression. Barbara Perry is a presidential historian and professor of governance at the University of Virginia's Miller Center.
If you view FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, as a modern president, most of us in political science and history do. And what he referred to in July of that 1932 presidential campaign against Herbert Hoover, the incumbent, was that he would start working with Congress in their first 100 days together. FDR said action is what he would give them. And so he, up till I would say now, under the second Trump administration, was viewed as having the most activist and the most successful administration in the first 100 days, passing through Congress 15 pieces of New Deal legislation. So first thing that FDR did was go on radio and give his first fireside address, which is also part of that 100 days, to calm the people, to say, here's how banking works, here's what I'm going to do, here's the legislation I will pass through Congress to regulate that, and then I will also have regulations for business and housing and farming to try to lift us out of this Great Depression. So he not only starts the concept of those first 100 days and judging, particularly by legislation that's passed, what is successful, what's not in a first 100 days, and then we end up applying that to all first 100 days of the rest of the presidents up till now.
I'm struck, Barbara, by the fact that it was a focus on legislation, a 100-day agenda to work with Congress. I'm not sure how much that is left anymore. It seems like the president's doing much more on his own because they've been mailed so far. Has that been a gradual shift, or was it more abrupt?
I think that the current administration has had an abrupt change in the substance of these executive orders, and by the way, has surpassed FDR, who signed 99 executive orders in his first 100 days, and even up to getting to the first 100 days for this second Trump administration, he had signed 99 to 100 already. So by the time we get to the official 100-day mark for Trump, there will be well over 100 executive orders signed.
Looking back through history, with that benefit, what were the most consequential first 100 days? Obviously 1933 that you mentioned with FDR. Which other ones were particularly consequential as we look back on it?
I'll give you another of John Kennedy, something very consequential in his first 100 days that he really wasn't responsible for, and that is the invasion of the Bay of Pigs at Cuba, trying to upend the dictatorship of communist Fidel Castro, who had aligned with the Soviet Union, our mortal enemy in the Cold War. And the word most often used for that invasion is fiasco. But something that's important to remember as well, as some political scientists, historians say about the first 100 days, is what style of president and presidency does this president portray? And in the case of Kennedy, he went before the public, he went before the press, and he said, after the Bay of Pigs, I will do a study, I will have an expert panel to see what went wrong here. I am the responsible officer of this government, and therefore I take full responsibility for the failure of this invasion. He had come into office with a 72% approval rating. It jumped almost 10 points up to 83% because he took responsibility. So sometimes those consequential first 100 days are not so much about what's happening with Congress, but I would say what's happening in the world, what's happening at home, in the economy and foreign affairs, in wartime situations, and do presidents make a correct decision, or we look back in history, is it a fiasco?
Barbara, looking back through history, is there a correlation in general between how consequential the first 100 days is and the rest of the 4-year term? I mean, they might make mistakes, might not make mistakes. Style, as you said, certainly we learn from. But in general, if it's consequential for the first 100 days, does that mean something for the rest, or can it be very different?
Well, let's take FDR and also a president before this modern concept of 100 days, the first 100 days, and I'll take Lincoln and even George Washington. They are always listed by scholars, political scientists, historians as the greatest presidents of the United States. If you have a good first 100 days, it's very unusual to have then an absolutely catastrophic presidency. I would say in the case of Donald Trump's second first 100 days, and as most people know who study history, he's only the second president to have a second non-consecutive term. He's off to a consequential start in disruption and somewhat chaos, both in how the government is perceived by the people, but also how the United States is perceived abroad, particularly with issues of tariffs and alliances and NATO, et cetera. So we don't know if this will portray a successful presidency or if this disruption and chaos of the government and of our standing in the world could lead to failure. We'll have to wait and see.